So it's time for movie reviews on Pure 24/7 Radio. I'm very pleased to welcome our movie expert, Andy Godfrey. Hi, Andy. How are you?
I'm good, Nathan. It's been a busy week and not too much new at the cinema. Only one new film at the
Ah,
cinema this week. There were some more coming out today, which we can talk about next week, but there's only one new film, so we can get into it in a bit of depth, which actually I quite like.
that sounds good. I do believe, if I recall correctly, that is the new Superman film.
It is the new Superman film, yes, and there are touches of the famous John Williams music. I'm sure you remember that theme where it's almost as if the music is shouting out loud the word Superman.
Yeah.
Uh, Superman, and some of the greatest soundtracks of all time, produced, of course, by John Williams: Raiders of the Lost Ark, Jurassic Park,
Wow.
Star Wars, and of course Superman. So there are touches of that theme. There's an all new score, but there are touches of that theme built into it. Yeah,
Oh, brilliant. Well, it's great to see you again.
thank
It's
you.
been a busy week for
Yep.
all of us. But it's good to be back to talk about the latest in the world of cinema. Do you want to start off with this one about Superman? I've seen a lot about it on social media.
What
It could be quite promising.
mostly good?
Well, I don't know. There's mixed reviews I've seen.
Okay,
So I'm curious to see your
okay,
thoughts.
right. So I went into this having heard reviews that it's a total mess, but a nice mess. So the dessert Eton mess, which is a sort of mixture of ice cream and fruit, but it's called an Eton mess. So basically, there are a number of stories going on within the central story. So we have a plot involving Superman's parents actually sending him to Earth to dominate us on behalf of Krypton and to become a god that we all worshipped. Okay. And to enslave us, basically.
Oh,
We have another plot in which Lex Luthor, Superman's master enemy, his nemesis, is has somehow created a wormhole that leads into a pocket universe where he is imprisoning people. And for a while, Superman is imprisoned in what's called a pocket universe, an alternative universe somewhere out there where people are imprisoned. We have a third plot, which involves Superman interfering in a civil war in Africa and causing it to stop. So those are the three main plots, but there are other plots going on as well, such as Superman's relationship with Lois Lane, for example. So we've got all of this going on, and it really is a total mess of a movie. I mean, one minute we're in the pocket universe story, the next minute we're trying to deal with Superman's parents, who apparently have sent him to Earth for nefarious reasons. The next minute we're dealing with his relationship. It's all over the place. I mean, it really is like they said, let's take everything we can think of and throw it into the mix. And I'm sure I saw the kitchen sink in there as well. Okay. It jumps from one story to another, from one scene to another. We're never quite sure what's coming next. And one or two people have taken it against it for that reason. But the vast majority of reviews that I've read and my own review said, hey, do you know what? This was really enjoyable. This was a really enjoyable mess. Sometimes it's fun to make a mess, right?
yeah.
To go out and roll in the mud and make a mess. So basically, I thought this was four stories in one. We jumped from one to the other and then back to the other and then from the third story to the first story and the second story to the fourth. And it's just all over the place. But it is a really entertaining, fun-filled film. Two other super characters make an appearance. So we know from DC Comics that Superman has a dog. We know that there's Super Dog. There is a lot of Super Dog in this. I mean, there really is a lot of Super Dog. And also Supergirl, who is Superman's niece, who's also landed on Earth. She makes an appearance as well. So I did a bit of checking, and you said to me last week that Henry Cavill was your favourite Superman, and he appeared in two Superman films. My favourite Superman is Christopher Reeves from the late 70s, early 80s films. I personally feel that David Cornsweet, who plays Superman in this, is the best Superman we've had since Christopher Reeves.
Wow.
And this is much more of a in style of a return to the 70s stroke early 80s films than it is to the sort of Superman Returns and Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman films that we had in the 2000s. It feels a bit old fashioned. It feels a bit more comic booky, actually. Some Superman every now and again the camera will focus in on him and he'll do the pause, and it's almost like you're looking at a still from a comic book of Superman's reaction to whatever happens to be going on. There's one scene where a great big monster appears in the middle of Metropolis and starts tearing down buildings. There's another scene where this alternate universe that Lex Luthor has created a bridge to starts tearing Metropolis apart. I mean, you've got to feel sorry for the people of Metropolis in this film because they are constantly having their buildings knocked down. They are constantly under threat. They are constantly being um, beaten up. And I just came out of it a bit dizzy. I'll be honest. I kept thinking, what the heck have I just seen? What was that? Um, but I realized that while I was watching it, I'd had a really good time because this is good old fashioned Superman entertainment. Um, there is a scene halfway through the end credits. There's a rather funny scene right at the end of the credits, which the credits these days, can take anything up to 10 minutes to scroll through because there's so many people. But each one of those people is important. I was preaching in a church on Sunday near Ipswich, and I met a girl who works for Marvel and designs costumes for Marvel Comics. So it was lovely to meet her. Hello, hello, Steph, if you're listening. So it's a mess. It's all over the place. But as each scene progressed, as the film progressed, I just began to relax more and more because I thought, I'm just having a really good time. I mean, you do need to leave your brain at the door when you're going to watch this, okay? Because otherwise, if you start asking deep questions about how did we get from here to there and what's this and what's that, you're going to get confused. You're going to get lost. There are no real answers. What they've done is they've said, okay, we will take everything that should be in a Superman comic book and we'll just chuck it at the screen and we'll see what comes out. But David Cornsweet himself, and I find his name very hard to pronounce, is a fantastic Superman. He is a brilliant Superman. And he just wears the costume with pride. There's the line about Superman representing truth, justice, in the American way, which was always Superman's catchphrase. The score is really good. But honestly, I mean, I know two friends of mine who've been to see it and didn't like it. And the reason they didn't like it was because they felt there was too much going on. Streamline it a little bit. It's over 2 hours long. Streamline it a little bit. Tell the story that you want to tell. Just don't tell me four stories, Now, I think there will be a sequel. I know there will be a sequel. In fact, they've already flagged up that next year we're going to get a new Supergirl film. So there was a Supergirl film back in the back in the 90s. Helen Slater starred as Supergirl, and she did a really good job. So we've already been told that there will be another one in this sequence by the same director. But James Gunn is the director, and he knows how to do comic book. He's done comic book for Marvel. He did he's done several Marvel films. So on the whole, most reviews have been 4 or 5 stars. I certainly gave it 4 stars. And I think that those who don't like it simply perhaps didn't buy into the fact that you're just going to get a total message, so just sit back and enjoy it. You know,
Yeah.
I really loved it. And I went back right through during this week, back through all the Superman films. And it's really interesting. The very first Superman film was made in 1948. And the name of the actor who played Superman was Kirk Allen. And he played him in a subsequent film in 1950. But they didn't give the name of the actor on the screen in the credits. They just said Superman, as if Superman is real. Superman is a believable character. And I think this film is harping back to that kind of tradition where it's saying, we are not presenting you, we are presenting you a fantasy character. We know it's fantasy. We know it's not. We know that no alien being is going to come from Krypton, but let's just have fun. You know, let's just enjoy ourselves. And
Yeah.
I loved it. It's a 12A certificate. If people want to go and see it with the kids, you should have a really good time.
Wow, brilliant. That's really interesting. I mean, I'm slightly surprised. I was not necessarily expecting such a good review, but as you say, it could have gone either way. It seems as though they've landed on something pretty good with a sort of a multi-plot lines, which can be really
Yes.
interesting. Like you say, a bit of
Yeah.
a mess. Everything's crisscrossing and intersecting and
Yes.
intertwined, and it makes your head spin a bit. But actually, that can be really entertaining, as you've said.
It can be, and it is, and it's good fun. And as I say, I think my two friends who didn't like it, um, there's a film that I absolutely hate. I absolutely loathe and detest called Bait. And one of my friends who reviews movies, he hated that film as well. And he messaged me and he said, "Come on, Andy, it's marginally better than Bait." No, it's not. It's miles better than Bait. It's great fun. It's get a sense of humour, get a sense of just I'm going to go with this. Nicholas Hoult plays Lex Luthor, and he is clearly just having fun as the bad guy. There's one scene where he puts Superman in a cage with another creature who's got a rock from Krypton hung around his neck, and Superman goes all weak and flabby. How he gets out of that is, pretty preposterous, but he does. Everything about this film is preposterous. Everything about this film is over the top. Everything about this film is just wow. What did they really do that? Did he really do that? Is that really happening? But I loved it to bits because it was just so much. And I think having had a couple of really stressful weeks to go in and see this and just lay back and relax and just be entertained by shenanigans on screen. Maybe I was in the right mood for it. I don't know. But Mark Kermode loved it. Empire gave it a really high rating. Empire Movie Magazine. All of the papers, I think the lowest rating of the newspapers, because I've read all the reviews, was 4 stars out of 5. So, those who don't like it are definitely in the minority. I understand why they don't like it. I think they wanted something a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more clear cut, a little bit more. And the trailer certainly led us to the impression that that's what we were going to get. The trailer does not give you the impression that you're going to get this crazy, chaotic mishmash of stuff going on. So I was surprised, but I just sat back and thought, yeah. And Superman is an iconic hero. He's got to have big red trunks. He's got to have the big red boots. We're told in this film that the reason why people don't look at Clark Kent and recognize him as Superman is because the glasses Clark Kent wears affects their vision. So when they look at him, the glasses kick in and there's some sort of X-ray going on that affects the vision of somebody looking at him. They see Clark Kent, they don't see Superman. So we're given an answer to that age-old question as to why is it that people look at Clark Kent but don't think he's Superman. They why don't they ever realize that when Superman's around, Clark Kent isn't? And in fact, in Superman 2, way back in when was it? 87, 78, 1980, sorry. Lois Lane did ask that question. So we finally get an answer. Lois Lane asked the question, Superman 2, how come you're never around, Clark, when Superman appears? How come how come Superman you're never here when Clark Kent's here? And she begins to realize in that film and put two and two together. But we are now told the reason why.
Yeah. Well,
But there's a
fascinating.
lot of super dog in this. I'm not a dog lover, but there's a lot of super dog in this, saving the day. Supergirl appears in it. Um, Honest to goodness, it's a really good mishmash. I loved it. I
Yeah.
just had a really good time.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, that's really fantastic. I've not heard of Superdog before, but that sounds brilliant.
Oh yeah, Superdog is very much a part of the DC comics. He was introduced several years after Superman appeared in the comic, because the first comic appeared in 1930s. Let's remember.
Wow.
So the first Superman comic appeared in the 1930s, and it was a sort of rival to what Marvel were doing. And Superman ended up with a dog that was sent from Krypton to give him a pet to look after, so the dog can fly as well. And also Supergirl comes from the remains of Krypton as well, and was introduced to the comics. So Superdog was introduced, I think, about somebody will correct me on this, but about 10 years after the Superman comics were started, and then they brought in Supergirl because I think they just felt Superman's getting a bit lonely. He needs some company all the time, somebody who actually understands him. And Supergirl was out there saving the world, and as I said, there was a movie, and we're going to be getting another Supergirl movie next year, which now I'm looking forward to it. James Gunn, as I say, has directed Marvel films before. He's directed some of the most successful Marvel films, adaptations of comics. So he knows what he's doing. And what he's done in this is say, I am going to take a comic. And sometimes when you read a comic, you've got a scene here and a scene there and a little insert here and another little insert there, He said, I'm going to take a comic, I'm going to bring it to life. Which is why the last few Spider-Man films have been so successful, because they did exactly the same thing. In fact, one of them was literally a comic book filmed. So he said, we're going to do this. We're going to go back to Superman's roots. And Superman was always designed to be entertaining and fun and defeat the bad guys. Let's just go for it. Let's just see what we can throw in there and go for it. And I really, really enjoyed it.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Andy. We'll be back in a minute to hear about the what's on streaming or on TV. So we're back. It's now time to look at the latest in on TV and also in streaming. We just heard about the latest Superman film, which you said is actually rather good. So that's brilliant. But what's on TV or on streaming nowadays?
Thanks, Nate. Yeah, just before we do that, can I just mention for families listening, there is a new Smurf movie out today. The Smurfs are back. Now, out of dedication to duty, I will go and see this. Okay. If families are looking to take kids to the cinema this weekend, Papa Smurf has been kidnapped and the other Smurfs have to go and rescue him. Now, I've always hated the Smurfs, these blue, yellowy creatures, with the white caps. Now, when I was a youngster, the Smurfs brought out their first record, and my dad bought it and kept playing it, and the sole intention was just to annoy us kids. So I've always hated the Smurfs. But for just to mention that for families, there is a new Smurf movie out today in cinemas if you fancy going and maybe getting out of the heat or whatever. So we'll look at a few films that are available on streaming. First thing that I just want to highlight is that Lilo and Stitch, which has been number one in the box office for the last month, is now available to stream. So the live action version of Disney's Lilo and Stitch, which has been a massive hit. I mean, and was really good. It was one of the better live action adaptations. That's now available to stream. If you've got Disney Plus, then look out for it because it's available. If you didn't get to the cinema to see what has surprisingly turned out to be one of the biggest films of the year, you can now get it by Disney Plus. So that's the first one I wanted to mention. I also wanted to mention for those who don't have Now TV or Sky TV, that Oppenheimer is now on Netflix. So Oppenheimer was the big hit of last year. There were two big films that came out last year. One was Barbie, one was Oppenheimer. They both came out on the same day, a bit like Mission Impossible and Lilo and Stitch. Barbie, I thought, was unbelievable nonsense and rubbish, absolutely terrible film. But Oppenheimer, which is the story of the guy who created the nuclear bomb, is on Netflix. It's long, it's very talky, but it's very, very rewarding. And go see it on Netflix as from today. On TV, well, you've got some great films on TV. I mean, just looking at Saturday alone, I could spend all day in front of the TV. So one to recommend for families is Babe. So I don't know if you've seen Babe. Babe is the story of a pig. And it's a really, really lovely film. In fact, both Babe films, because there was a sequel called Babe in the City, are showing on E4 this weekend. And Babe Pig in the City was the sequel. James Cromwell plays the owner of Pig, the farmer, and it's a really, really delightful film. So that's on E4, one for families. Another classic movie, really classic movie, that is on BBC Two on Saturday afternoon is The Searchers. So this is a Western starring John Wayne. It was remade recently, and it's a story of a young girl who is kidnapped by Indians, and then John Wayne goes after her to rescue her. It's got a very, very famous closing shot, which is basically John Wayne riding off into the sunset, seen from a log cabin. The Searchers, if you haven't seen it, it's one of the all-time greats. It's certainly one of the all-time great Westerns. And it's on BBC Two on Saturday. And also, I mean, just as I say, keep going for just Saturday alone. So we've got War for Planet of the Apes, which is one of the recent Planet of the Apes films. That's on ITV. It is a story about apes fighting humans after a global catastrophe. On Channel 4 on Saturday is Titanic. Now, I have seen this so many times. I mean, I remember going to see Titanic at the cinema the day it opened. And I went with my then wife, and we sat down, and there were two girls in front of us. And as the lights went out, one girl turned to the other and she said, "You know, it sinks in the end, don't you?" And I just tapped her on the shoulder and said, "You've just ruined the whole thing for me." um, the thing with Titanic, obviously, the story, the love story at the heart of it is totally contrived and probably never wouldn't have happened in the real world. But it's a totally rich girl follows a poor boy on this boat while they're journeying. But what I love about I've always been fascinated by the Titanic, and what I love about the Titanic is the recreation of the Titanic as it was. So we see the wreck right at the start of the film. We see the wreck of the Titanic. We then sort of get the special effects of the screen waves, and we go into the boat as it was back in 1912. And everything down to the plates and cups and cutlery is an exact replica of what was on the ship at the time.
Wow, that's
And we
impressive.
get to see all parts of the ship, including the hold where there's a Rolls Royce car that somebody's driven on and is taking with them to America. Um, at the end, one of our for anyone who hasn't seen it, one of our heroes does die, and needlessly, because the other hero is hanging onto a piece of wood onto a wardrobe door on which there is room for two people. But he doesn't get on it for some reason. So Titanic is on. Titanic is worth seeing. Great score, fantastic score, and of course the famous Celine Dion song. My heart will go on. Also, now for fans of music, and this is all just Saturday across the board. I mean, it's just a great day for film buffs. Saturday, there is a film on BBC Two at 10 o'clock in the evening, so that'll give you some idea of where we're going certificate wise. But it's called The Commitments. And this is a musical directed by Alan Parker. It's a story about a rise of a soul band from the back streets of Dublin. The music is out of this world. It's one of my most played soundtracks, the soundtrack to The Commitments. I really want to mention it because the music is sensational. The language will be a bit rife for some, I understand that, but it's the rise of a soul band. And then finally, just one more to mention if we've got time. Let's go for, again, let's stick with Saturday. Downton Abbey. Downton Abbey is on. Feature length, the first film, there have been two films, there's a third one coming. Feature length film about the people who live in Downton Abbey. Basically, rich people, poor people. The rich people are upstairs, the servants are downstairs, and I went to the premiere. I was actually invited through Sorted magazine to the premiere of Downton Abbey, and really, really enjoyed it. I don't watch the TV series, but I enjoyed the film. It's a really nice domestic drama about people who are rich and their servants.
Wow. Fantastic. So, as you say, a great day for movie buffs. You've got all sorts of classics in there, a couple of
Yeah.
family films, a couple of new ones. So, yeah, plenty to watch over the weekend. Brilliant. Thanks so much, Andy.
Oh, it just goes on and on.
It does. It does. Brilliant. Well, we'll be come back in just a second to hear about one film you reckon we should definitely watch, a must watch for this weekend, whether at cinema or on TV. So it's movie reviews on Pure 24/7 radios this morning, and we've discussed a great film in cinema, the new Superman. We've looked at what's going on in TV. Apparently, every kind of film you could possibly imagine. Loads of classics, loads of new ones on
Yeah.
TV this weekend. But we are now going to talk about a couple of must-watch films. What have we got for us, Andy?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm going to say Superman is a must watch.
Okay.
You can take the kids to see it. They will probably understand it, even if you don't. And I really enjoyed Superman. So, but for me, a must watch, always when there's a James Bond film on. I am a huge, massive James Bond fan. I like to think that if I was to go a mastermind, if one of my chosen subjects was James Bond, I'd like to think I'd do okay. and I have every James Bond film on the shelf behind me there. So I love James Bond. So for me, a must watch is on Sunday afternoon on ITV, and many people will have this on DVD or Blu-ray, but because you obviously get adverts on ITV. But a must watch is 1977's The Spy Who Loved Me. And the reason I'm highlighting this one is because this was the first James Bond film I ever saw at the cinema. Now, thankfully, because of the day and age in which we live, and last year James Bond was 50 years old, I have now seen every single one of the 25 James Bond films at the cinema. Okay.
Wow.
My favourite is On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which is the one that starred George Lazenby. He only did one, got a tragic ending. I loved it. But The Spy Who Loved Me does hold a special place in my heart for two reasons. One, because it was the first James Bond film I ever saw at the cinema, 1977. You can see how old I am. The second reason is it was the first film soundtrack I ever bought. Now, I have a collection, Nathan, of over 500 film soundtracks. Okay. I love collecting anything to do with movies, but film soundtracks especially. And the, amazing music. I'm going to get the new Superman soundtrack. You can go for country and western soundtracks. You can go for pop, classical, whatever you will like. Every genre of music is out there and has been used in movies. And Bill Conti did his one and only, who was a very well-known composer at the time. He did his one and only score for James Bond, for The Spy Who Loved Me. Carly Simon sang the song, The Spy Who Loved Me. They actually managed to work the title into the lyrics, which they weren't able to do with every James Bond film, to be fair. So they managed to work the title into the lyrics. I mean, listen to Tom Jones singing Thunderball and just appreciate how the lyricist got the line Thunderball into the song. It's just incredible. So this is Roger Moore in his third James Bond film. We open with a giant supertanker swallowing up a Russian nuclear submarine. We then see the giant supertanker swallowing an American nuclear submarine. So this thing's out on the high oceans, capturing this massive boat, capturing submarines. And the Brits realise that probably we're next. So James Bond is called into action. And when we first see James Bond, he's in a ski lodge. This is the pre-credit sequence, one of the most famous pre-credit sequences of all. He's in a ski lodge, high up in the Swiss Alps, really high up. And he's called into action. He says to the girl he's with, of course he's with a girl, I've got to leave you. As he goes out the door, people start shooting at him. Bad guys, we never find out who they are really. They're just there. They happen to attract him down. Enemies of Bond. They start shooting at him. And it turns out one of his skis has actually got a gun in it. So he lifts up his ski and bang, bang, bang. As he's going down the mountain, he comes to a cliff edge and everybody's going, ah. And when you see this on the big screen, it's actually one of the most impressive stunts ever. It was done by a stuntman. It wasn't done by Roger Moore.
Funnily enough.
Funnily enough. Yeah, I wonder why. It's generally regarded as one of the best stunts, if not in Bond movies, but one of the best stunts in movies. So he's coming down the mountain. He sails off the edge of the cliff, and you think, that's it. James Bond's going to die. That's it. He's had it. And he tumbles and he falls and he's falling and he's so high up and he's falling and he's falling. And eventually a parachute opens with a big Union Jack on it. And we get a close-up of Roger Moore's smug face smiling. Didn't get me. And we see the Union, and we go into the opening titles with the great song. Barbara Bach, who was married for a time to Ringo Starr, is the Bond girl in this. She plays a Russian agent. And because British submarines and American submarines and Russian submarines have been hijacked, Russia and Britain have to work together. So Bond is called to work with this very beautiful Russian secret agent. It also introduced a new villain to the Bond series called Jaws. Jaws was played by Richard Kiel. He's about 6'6" tall, and Jaws had metal teeth. And there's very interesting thing that happens towards the end in regard to a magnet in his metal teeth. But as I say, it was the first Bond film I saw at the cinema, so it does have a special place in my heart. I would have been, I don't know how old I would have been. I was born in 62, so it's 1977. I've been back. I've seen them all at the cinema. I just love James Bond. Interestingly enough, we should have mentioned this last week. The new director for the next Bond film has been announced as Denis Villeneuve. Now, he's been making some great science fiction films of late, including a film called Arrival, which was about aliens arriving on Earth and trying to communicate with us. He's a great filmmaker. I'm really excited by this news that the next Bond film, and people who've seen the last Bond film will know what happened to James Bond. He died. Everybody knows that now. Whisper it. So it's going to be interesting to see how they bring James Bond back. Obviously they're going to have to go back in time and tell the backstory. But if you want to put your feet up with a bit of cake and a cup of tea on Sunday afternoon, my recommendation is The Spy Who Loved Me. If you want to go to the cinema this weekend, if you've got very young children, take them to see The Smurfs. They will enjoy it. I can't promise you I'm going to enjoy it, okay? But I will go in with trying to be fair to it as a kids' movie. Sometimes film critics have to see kids' movies. That's fine. Yeah, it's a good excuse. And but in the meantime, the other film to see at the cinema is Superman. Get out there and see it. Go in, leave your brain at the door. Go in prepared for a mess of a movie, but sometimes making a mess can be great fun.
Yeah, absolutely true. Well, thank you so much, Andy. It's been a pleasure as always. Must-watch films for this weekend would be the new Superman if you're heading into the cinema, and The Spy Who Loved Me with Roger Moore
Yeah.
for on TV. Thank you so much, Andy. It's been a pleasure as always. Hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you, Nathan, and you. I'll be tuning in to Pure over the weekend. I've got a lot of driving to do this weekend. I've got to go from Milton Keynes to Bristol, so I'll have you guys on and always enjoy the music, especially when you play some Bruce. But
Oh, brilliant. Thanks so much, Andy. I'll see you soon.
God bless, Nathan. God bless everybody listening.
Here at Pure 24/7 Radio, we have had the privilege of speaking to some amazing people with amazing stories.
Now, what about, I thought I'd go a bit further, what about goat and sheep's milk?
Yes.
Becoming quite popular. Very similar to cow's milk. So we don't use it in the first year of life, you can afterwards. And their nutrient profiles, how good they are, is pretty similar to cow's milk. Allergenicity, how often do they cause allergies? About the same. They're a bit more expensive sometimes. It's pretty equivalent.
Yeah, we're really excited, especially excited for Josh because it's his first book and he's really passionate with that Gen. Did you say Gen Z or Gen Z? I've heard it said in
I don't know. I'm too old. I don't know.
Yeah, we're not in that age category, so we've not got a clue what they're called.
It's a pot boiler. It's a good, exciting popcorn thriller. I didn't think it was anything too special, but I think watching it at home, people will probably enjoy it more than I did going to the cinema to see it. Really good film. I love it. I walk into a cinema and I turn my phone off. Nobody can get hold of me for a couple of hours. I'm in a completely other world. Every single time I go to the cinema, and for me, it's like going to Oz. It's like going to another world and escaping and relaxing, and I thoroughly enjoy it.
If you have missed any of these interviews or would like to hear them again, you can. Simply head over to our catch-up section at www.pure247radio.org. That's www.pure247radio.org.